This is the review for the second exam, chapters 9 through 11 and 13 through 14. For Marketing 351, I am reading off of the review guide sheet, which you have, or you should have, or you can get. I will be brief and pretty general. Of course, the detail is in the readings, as well as the notes that we've gone through in class relative to the PowerPoints, which are in chronological order. So you should know some general definition stuff relative to the course, that marketing is creating, communicating, delivering a message of value. It's a strategic function, along with the other functional areas of accounting, finance, HR, management, whatever else I said, production, research and development, right? And marketing works synergistically with those others to make money. And the best way that it does that is by communicating its value proposition, what people are willing to give up to what they get. And the more clearly they know that through marketing, creating, communicating, delivering that value, the better off the business is going to be. They do that through their toolbox, which is referred to as the 4 Ps, or the marketing mix, which is price, product, promotion, and place. Of course, we know that we can't and should not talk to everybody. It's inefficient to have a MROI, marketing return on investment, because the resources we do our marketing with is expensive. So we need to allocate them efficiently and effectively through segmentation. Segmentation is the process of breaking up a large market into definable segments or chunks. That's done through the bases of segmentation, which are demographics, psychographics, which is the best, geographics, behavior, and usage rate. When we take those segments and put them together through the process of aggregating, we get something that is called a target market. And we could have several target markets or just one target market depending upon the scope of the organization. So that's the general stuff that you should know that we've kind of cover almost every day in class, and we have since the first day. And now we'll go through the 5 chapters, chapter 9, 10, 11, and then 13 and 14, again in a very general, brief way. Chapter 9 is on research. We went through the 2 research traditions or methodologies and a tradition attached to that. One isn't better than the other. They're used for different purposes. We have quantitative research, which is the positivist philosophy. It is usually done to look at large populations and generalize those populations through statistical sampling. When we do quantitative research, it's typically done with large samples and some type of scaling question, Likert scales, in surveys. Qualitative research is the other type of research methodology which aligns with the social constructivist philosophy, that there is more than one meaning. Quantitative or positivist is there's only one. Qualitative is there's more than one, and therefore we look for themes or insights in focus groups and small sample sizes, and we cannot generalize that information, but we use it to inform, and that typically is aligned with psychographic segmentation. There are several steps in the research process that you need to be aware of. You do not need to memorize those steps that were articulated in the chapter, but you do need to recognize that research is done before, during, and after. That's when we do our research. We do primary research, which is research for the first time, and we use secondary research a lot in marketing, where we purchase research that someone else has done. And again, why do we do research? Because we want to have a return on our investment. We want it to be informed, our decision making. We want to follow market orientation, where we're asking the market what they want first, and then we build our product or service around it. So again, it's used for strategy, it's used to serve our customer, and it's used to make sure that we have a marketing return on our investment. Chapter 10 talks about the different types of products that are out there, knowing that product is really important to the value proposition. That's probably the biggest thing you need to get out of Chapter 10, is without a product or service, we don't have anything to set a value to or a dollar amount to in our value proposition. So we have to make sure that we get that product right, or at least the number of products we're offering right. We did define product as all the positive and negative things associated with the product and or service. Remember, service is the same thing in our discussion. It's not just the tangible or the intangible, but it's all the things that are wrapped up into it, including the brand, its popularity, the utilitarian, and the hedonic, warranties, service, things of that nature also are part of the total product and the value proposition. We know that a product or an item, a product item is one standalone product, like Fruity Pebbles cereal. A product line would be Fruity Pebbles, Cheerios, Chex, Count Dracula, and Grape Nuts, if they're all from the same company. So they have different types of product items that are similar, and they do that to get to different target markets if they believe that it's worth their time and effort, because there's inventory involved, to have separate product items, which in totality make a product line. A product mix then are different products and product lines that are different from each other. And so large companies typically have product mixes where your Procter & Gamble and you might have food, laundry detergent, toothpaste, and toiletries. So it is usually only large businesses that have product mixes. Most are more about a product item and a product line. We know that brand is real important to any business because it is a differentiator. It's what distinguishes and differentiates the brand or the product or service or the company from the competition. It's when they're recognizable readily and people know who they are and what they do and who they do it for. To be branded, it costs a lot of money. It's very expensive to be branded. And without a brand, you're probably not going to be in the evoked set. So to spend money on branding is critical, and that can be done through names, phrases, taglines, colors, fonts, symbols, and other art that, again, distinguishes and identifies and differentiates the company and what they do from the competition. Oftentimes, or not often, but the brand has a perception of how they'd like to be viewed in the marketplace. That is called the position, and how they are viewed by the marketplace is also the position. So there's a dichotomy, or there's two views of that position. And oftentimes as the market moves, the brand has to reposition itself and rebrand themselves in the marketplace to stay relevant. Otherwise they will exit the market through the product life cycle. Which moves to, I guess one last thing I'm looking at, Chapter 10 is the principles of packaging. You need to know a number of things that packaging does besides facilitate sale, facilitate recycling, identify and differentiate, protect, and also store. Those are the main principles or functions of packaging. Chapter 11 is on new product development. Recognize that there are a number of steps to get all of the ideas to a new product, that most don't make it through the number of steps that go through that hopper, as we talked about. So you always want to have a bunch of ideas or marbles in, so ultimately you have some new innovative ideas that are coming out of the new product development process. But more importantly, Chapter 11 really focuses on the diffusion of innovation. The diffusion of innovation is a theory that's been around for some time now, and explains a bunch of different things, but mostly it explains how products, services, ideas are adopted. That's the key word there, adopted by the market over time. Not all people adopt a new idea, product, or service immediately. Those very few are the innovators. And at the other end of the bell curve are the people that barely do it at the end, and they're called the laggards. And this diffusion of innovation has some rules attached to it. When people believe it's time to try something new, they'll only do it if 4 principles are met. You need to make sure that you understand what those 4 principles are for people to diffuse into the 5 different categories. You need to know you need to know the different categories of innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards, and understand that the reason that that is important to know is marketing strategy is different at each one of those different innovation stages for the different folks that are adopting that new product or service. Also recognize that aligns with our product life cycle, which also has 4 stages. You need to be able to graph that as well with the X and the Y axis, just like the diffusion of innovation, and label everything and understand how it's related to the profit line and why it's important to know. Again, at each stage of introduction, expansion, maturity, decline, and either exit or redo the graph again is important to marketing and marketing strategy and tactics, because it requires it requires a difference dependent upon what stage is it in. We also know that, especially with the diffusion of innovation, especially Maloney's rule, you'll need to know that when it hits that chasm or that 16%, that we change our marketing strategy from scarcity to popularity, or what's referred to as social proof. Chapter 13 and 14 are on the place of the P's, and the most important part about the place of the P's is for you to recognize that it is about distribution, supply chain management, logistics management. How are you getting your materials and ultimately product or service to your next market, to the market you're selling to? How efficient and effective are you in doing that? The more efficient and effective you are through supply chain management, channels of distribution, the intermediaries, from the manufacturer to a wholesaler to an agent broker to a wholesaler to a retailer to the ultimate consumer, the better you can save on cost, because inventory is a cost of doing business. And if you can save on cost, you can pass that on to the consumer in the value proposition. So it is related to marketing. And how quickly can we get our product to market when supply should meet demand, mostly through now what we know is just-in-time inventory systems, JIT, to handling the materials properly so we don't have shrink and we can lower our costs and again pass that savings on, which is part of the value proposition. The strategy and the channel decision that we use on how to, or what intermediary to go through in between us and the ultimate consumer depends on how much value we can derive from each one of those. And in fact, this value chain, this supply chain management can be a competitive advantage. We know that Walmart's really core sustainable competitive advantage is their ability to source products at scale, large quantities, take that reduction in price and pass it on to the savings. And that's what they hang their hat on in their value proposition. Other places might not do it on a cost side, but their procurement of supply allows them to get unique items that no one else can get, and they can charge a premium for that. Like rare art dealers, that is their value proposition as well, related to how they get their product and service to the ultimate customer. You also should note that there are some trends in supply chain management. Those trends would be the electronization or the virtual storage, globalization, and outsourcing, but now also insourcing, where we buy local, also happens to be a trend. Again, that's a real brief overview of what's going to be on the exam. You need to connect the dots with the detail, but it will be very similar to what I just walked through. Enjoy.